Hi everyone, welcome. Welcome back to another Onkruid video. Welcome back to another video where my room is just messy as shit. But I feel this urge to record, so I'm not gonna do anything about it. Welcome back to the series on Irvin Yalom's The Gift of Therapy, where we deep dive into his knowledge that he wants to spread throughout the lens of newcomers in the field of therapists like I am myself. Tip 10. Create a new therapy for each patient. Research into psychotherapy and its effectiveness often dives into comparisons between different kinds of therapies or between therapies and so-called standard therapy, which are less realistic, probably less effective and hard to reproduce. Add onto that most of that research is being conducted by inexperienced therapists, and what we end up with is kind of an inconsequential, not so useful branch of research, if we're completely honest. Experienced therapists know that therapy happens, it unfolds, it's spontaneous, it's impulsive. It develops itself in a dynamic and ever-changing way. If we really want to say something about therapy, we should research the process in every single therapy session. Treatment protocols are trying to impede on that spontaneousness, on that impulsivity. They are trying to make therapies more universal, more fitting into this mold, more fitting into categories. They are putting therapeutic approaches in boxes and making something that is supposed to be spontaneous and impulsive streamlined. Yalom thinks, however, that we should create a new therapy for every single patient. He mentions the insight delivered to us by Carl Gustav Jung, famous psychoanalyst, famous therapist, on how every internal world of every single person is so idiosyncratically beautiful and different from that of every other individual that we should construct a whole new language to talk about the internal world of every single person. Every single person's internal world should have one language. Yalom goes one step further. Just the language is not enough for him. He thinks that for every single person, he's talking about therapy, of course, more than the internal world, but he thinks for every single person there should be developed an individual therapy, a new therapy for every individual coming to sit across from you in the therapy room. The biggest priority in the collaboration between the two travelers, between the client and the therapist, is creating that therapeutic relationship, according to Yalom. You don't create the therapy before the therapy happens, before the therapy starts, and that's exactly what those protocols are trying to do. They are trying to create a little guide before the therapy is even started, and according to Yalom, that's not possible because therapy develops itself. Creating the therapeutic relationship, and therefore the therapy is actually the goal of therapy. It's what therapy should be about. Technique only works if it follows from spontaneousness, and there's no room for being spontaneous if your therapy is clear cut from the start, if it is developed into the smallest intricacies right from the get-go, if there's no room for anything dynamic or anything flexible. Yalom discusses two clients in this chapter. One was a woman very sad about the death of her dad. So sad that she found it unbearable to go to his funeral, and she kind of asked permission from Yalom to not go. Yalom ordered her not to go and even planned a session with him at the exact time slot the funeral was happening at. How interesting is that? How directive is that? They spent the session reminiscing about her father and about their time together and about beautiful memories she still had of him. And the client later was very thankful towards Yalom for this impulsive solution to her struggle of like, I don't want to go to the funeral, but I feel obliged, my family is gonna be mad. Now she could say I had a therapy appointment. Another client was really having a rough day when she came into the session with Yalom. Yalom's first intention was to soothe her, to give her a hug, to really like tell her everything will be fine and stuff like that. He realized this was not the best approach though, because the client had a history of sexual abuse. Don't touch clients that you know have a history of sexual abuse. That should be another tip in this book, because it really should be taken too hard by every therapist. Because he couldn't give her a hug, he tried to look for another small form of comforting. And what he came up with was telling the client that next time they could plan the session at an hour more convenient to her. She saw this as him not wanting to see her at all, as trying to brush her off, which led to quite a conflict in their session. But it also led to a healthy discussion about self-hatred. Self-hatred of the woman projected onto Yalom. Oh, he wants to change the time slot of our sessions. That means that he doesn't want me here. That means that he wants me out of his agenda. He must hate me. Everything that happens in the therapy is valuable, is something you can work with. But things can only happen in therapy if you take risks, if you do things, if you take action. And that can only happen if therapy can be spontaneous. So if you can develop a new therapy for every single person and you don't have to adhere to that strict guideline in something like a protocol. My own thoughts. Some clients are looking for a cognitive, philosophical discussion about what is going on in their life. They are not served well, or they don't think they will be served well with client-centered mumbo-jumbo about feeling, about experiencing, about their flow of experience, about focusing, about emotion-focused therapy, about becoming their true self, maybe a little bit becoming their true self, because that existential self-actualization topic kind of falls into some philosophical topics. I digress. I'm not gonna ask them to close their eyes and try to feel inside their body what their felt sense is telling them, according to Eugene Gentlin's focusing. I'm not gonna ask them whether they are using maladaptive secondary emotions to mask their primary adaptive emotions, according to the work of people like Greenberg or Robert Elliott. They would probably look at me in a weird way and maybe even stop coming. That might be a projection of my uncertainty as an inexperienced therapist, but again, I digress. I've come to terms with the fact, or with the idea, that not all therapies can be the same. That not every client I get seated across from me is looking for that by-the-books, client-centered therapeutic approach. Not everyone is keen on feeling, on exploring their emotions, on really getting into the nitty and gritty of their internal well of feelings, their internal lake of emotions that they dwell on. And I respect that. I'll touch the boundaries sometimes, for sure. I'll try to get them out of their comfort zone a little bit, try to let them explore what feelings and emotions might mean for them, how they could be of use in their life, because they might just not see the potential benefits of it yet. But I don't go too far. I don't just keep bashing on that same wall that they have put up forever until eternity does us apart. I change and shape my therapy to what I think the client needs in this point and at this time and in this context of their life, in this phase of their life. As a good fellow traveler, I even ask them where they want to go. I ask them, like, do you feel safe? Is it okay for you to talk about your father this session, your father that you lost? Or would you rather discuss what happened with your friends at school, something a bit more actual, something a bit more in the here and now, something maybe a bit easier to talk about? What are you feeling like today? It might seem like avoidance on my end to some, but in reality it's a great respect on my part, or that's at least how I see it, a great respect to my client's agenda and to what they want to do with the session. It's their process. I've gotten feedback by my educators though that I can go too far in this, that I sometimes have certain catch-up sessions with clients that come once every month and they just tell me this happened and I experienced this and this happened with this girl and this happened with this boy I knew, and that is not therapy. But if that is what my client seems to need, then why not? If that is what they want to pay for to make it financial, then why not? The answer is, of course, that sometimes the therapist, in their process directiveness, can have an expert view and sometimes even a better view on what the client actually needs in this moment. Maybe they actually need to unlock that flow of experiencing that they're trying to keep away from, but they just don't want to get into the nitty-gritty of things. And then you have to actually direct them to paths they don't necessarily want to take. You, as their fellow traveler, have to tell them, okay, I realize you want to just take the main road up ahead, but if we take this shortcut right here, even though it's a bit steeper up, we will end up at our destination a lot quicker. Of course, clients sometimes just use this cognitive philosophical approach to avoid living or reliving their difficult or just emotions in general, difficult emotions or emotions in general. And I want to have at least some respect. I want to have a lot of respect, but I want to have at least some respect for the time and space they feel they need to really open up. In time, I think the therapy I create for my clients will be more directive, and I will think I know what they need and try to shape it a little bit to what I know from research and theory and textbooks that will actually help them move further in their life. But I want to be patient in this endeavor. It is a tight rope walk sometimes though. Creating a new therapy or sticking to what you know works, it's quite hard to harmonize those two sometimes, or to find the right balance between them. But with every single client, I try to do this again. I try to make a new therapy that fits both of these needs and mainly fits their needs. Let me know what you think about this in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. Hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.